So, good morning, everyone. I've been cleaning out closets and, past stuff, digging through boxes and all, and I ran across a little book. It's not in print. I'm sure it's not in print now. I bought this little book. It was printed in 1991, and I was at a conference, a training conference down in Austin, and a woman gave a workshop on this, on anger, and the title of it is Angry, Do You Mind If I Scream? And so when I ran across this, I started looking at it, and it's bottom line, and I did all the assignments, but bottom line, it's looking primarily of where the anger comes from. And this was really the first information. I mean, Claudia Blythe, there was a little talk about adult children of alcoholics then, but not much. This is the first woman that I ever heard talk much about adult children of alcoholics and how to treat, or to address your own issues if you've had any kind of trauma. And so I wrote on every page in here, and I did the assignment. And I'm sure it did me some good. I'm sure it did. But it didn't stop the anger. It made me recognize where it was and where it came from. And, knowledge is good. And I got a lot of knowledge about anger and how to deal with it. But it was until I started training with Pia Mellody. And her process is shame and anger reduction work. And so I did the training, and then I went to California and actually went through her workshop, a 5-day. And that's where I got convinced that the anger that we carry around, anger turned inward and turns to depression. But if you don't deal with the anger, you don't see where it's coming from, it can turn to rage. And that's where mine had gone. I was very up close and personal with, with anger and particularly rage. And that's what I got to begin to deal with in Pia's workshop. And so, having been trained by her, then I came home and started using that process with our own clients. And it wasn't just a one and done deal with me. I went back, did more work with Pia. I went into 30-day treatment program for trauma in Florida. I would do a 6-day, an 8-day. I would do whatever was available at the time and to work on the rage and the anger and the trauma. And I'm not saying everyone that has anger has unresolved childhood trauma, but there's a good chance that you do. And so it is about looking at where that is coming from, where the anger and the rage is coming from. Anger is a very healthy emotion. All feelings are, but although feelings are not facts, they feel very real. And, unless we address each one of them and begin to feel them, we're not going to really be a full feeling human being. And God made us to be feelers, and so it's, anger is a natural emotion, but what it does, it usually comes from feeling threatened or feeling hurt or having a lot of fear. In the 12 and 12 of AA, it talks about fear is a thread that runs through every feeling, everything, every action, every behavior that we have. Fear runs through it. Fear of not getting what we want, or fear of losing what we already have. It's fear, fear-based. And so that's why in recovery we have to, if we want to recover and not use, is to deal with the feelings and really dig down deep and deal with them. And like I said, in this little book, I did all the homework assignments. I wrote and I talked to sponsors, and I'm sure I got some relief from this, at least the knowledge. And knowledge is valuable. But the main thing I got out of this is that it starts in childhood, and that was my first really information that I remember getting about how. I don't even remember at that time that I was claiming being an incest survivor. But this little book is the one that really taught me how any unresolved childhood issue can produce unresolved anger and rage. So with that, like I said, anger is usually secondary. It comes, when you trace it down, it usually comes from, some form of fear or being threatened, and, not being able to express those feelings, then the anger comes out. And what it does, we'll either hold anger in, and anger turned inward turns to depression. Anger turned inward turns to depression. And what does depression do to us? It makes us very sick. And if we don't address the anger and we hold it in tight, if we were taught to be a good girl, and good girls don't get angry, or it's not okay to get angry in this house, and that's what I heard. It wasn't okay for my sister and I to get angry, but my father was a rager, and my mother could do her share of anger, but it wasn't okay for us to. And so you hold it in and hold it in, and it turns to depression, and then that depression starts breaking the body down physically, and we break down and stress-related illnesses. There is a long list of them. The body cannot accommodate. It does accommodate the mind. It does, and how it accommodates it, it breaks down. It absorbs the anger, and it begins to break down in every fiber of our body. And so it seems to me that anger can do a lot, physically, mentally, emotionally. And so it is a feeling that needs to be addressed, and we need to continue to address it, because it, anger can be sneaky. It can come up in different ways, and we can deny that we're angry if anyone, confronts us about it. So as I go through this, I just wanted to kind of talk to you about how maybe some of the things that you can do, some of the things I've done, and a lot of it's come out of this book. But I'll tell you the most important thing I ever did is, and I didn't do it just with Pia Melody. When I went to on-site up in South Dakota, an 8-day training, we were taught there how to do the anger reduction work. And a lot of the work that I learned to do there by, I can't think of her name, but I'll tell you in a minute. But anyway, then I went back and did her 8-day. And it was really all about looking at childhood issues and doing the release work, and we get through with the work after a while. The way that we know when we're through with our childhood work is we can talk about it almost like news, weather, and sports. We can talk about it. That happened, back in the past. And it shouldn't have happened, to a dog, let alone a child. But if we do our work around it and bring it up to the present, we can look back and say, so what? Yeah, that happened. But now what? Now is the moment of power, and now is the time that we need to learn to live in the present. I was telling somebody just yesterday, when we get too far into the future, even tomorrow, next week, this weekend, whatever, when we get too far over into the future, if we're not careful, we get into fear. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Or if we dwell too much in the past, the past is, we must look at the past in order to heal the past. But to live there, to hang out there, it's a pretty bad neighborhood to hang out in, because when we get into the past and we look at some of the things that we've done and what people have done to us, we either get to feeling sorry for ourselves or mad at ourselves, and we get to feeling guilty. Well, why did I do such and such? If you're in a 12-step program, we have a tried, true program that is if you take a problem and use those 12 steps from start to finish with the problem, you're going to go through a process when you get to the bottom of it, of making amends and finding forgiveness for yourself and someone else if you need to. So, but I really wanted to kind of talk about, anger and how, and y'all know that where we talk about the feelings chart, that anger left unaddressed, if you don't face it and address it, or if you're carrying someone else's. Like my father was a rager, and I carried his rage, and I'm not proud of that. And I did a lot of damage with my rage, particularly to my children, some to my husband. But sometimes we save our worst feelings for the folks that we love the best. But it would come out with grocery checkers. It would come out anywhere, really, if anyone confronted me about anything. I mean, anything. And then that rage would come out. And then when, rage, I believe, goes through an addiction cycle, because it starts with usually us feeling bad about ourselves, or we feel bad. And then, that feeling of anger comes up. Maybe we're feeling bad because someone didn't speak to us, or somebody's not being nice to us, or whatever. Bless our hearts. So it starts with the feeling of anger. And if we don't deal with it then what happens is it multiplies. And we get angry, more anger. And then, what that anger stops being anger, and it turns to rage. We feel anger, and then we blow up. And once we blow up, and we feel good, we get the release. That is where the big book talks about the release of pain and anger, that release, that sense of ease and comfort. That's what I'd get after a rage. But it didn't last long, because I'd look around at the people I harmed, and immediately, the guilt would set in. And I've gone to school and, embarrassed them to death. Karen, that's on here, I went to school one time. She was about in the 4th grade. I don't know if she remembers it, but I had gotten angry at her before she went to school. And Karen was my smiling child. She was the one that did not want to cause anybody any trouble, and really caused very little until she got to be a teenager. And that wasn't trouble, though, she was being a teenager. But something happened before she went to school that morning, and I lost my temper with her. And I felt so guilty. So I changed my clothes. I still had on my old robe. I put my clothes on, and I went to school, knocked on the door, and called her out in the hall and made my amends to her. Now, looking back, I should have probably waited till she got home. I don't know. Probably embarrassed her. I don't know about that. But I just felt like I had to go make amends to that child. And I've made a lot of amends to my children. When I would rage, and then, minutes after I make amends. And I like what Kim says about step 9 is making amends. What we do is mend our behavior. We can say, I'm sorry, till hell freezes over, and nothing changes. And that's what I would do. Oh, I'm sorry, I will not do that again. And I meant it until I couldn't keep my rage down. So, rage is dangerous, and if we're carrying around someone else's, or that we deny we have anger, a lot of people don't want to admit that they're angry. And it is a very healthy emotion. It's what we do with the anger that makes us sick. The gift of anger gives us energy, strength, and motivation. You get angry about something happened in your community, or in your country, or in your family, something that you can bring about a change. That's healthy anger, where you can do something about it and bring about a change. But if you don't deal with it, talk about it, let it go, it can stay on the inside and fester and burn and turn to rage. Okay, give you some little hints about some little rules, and some of them, not all, a little bit of them came out of this little book, but some of them just came from my own experience. And I will tell you today, I'm not a rager. I am a recovering rager. I guess I can get angry. I don't really I can get angry, but I do something different with it today. And part of what I do different is what I listed here. And anger is not one of my biggest problems. Anger and self-pity used to be my go-tos, rage and self-pity. And God has healed, and jealousy, and God has literally healed those feelings out of my brain and my soul, and I'm grateful for that. Okay, but I never take it for granted, because I can slip back into those old behaviors. Any of us could at a flash, if we don't. We have to stay in fit spiritual condition every day. Fit spiritual condition. The big book talks about that, how our job is to stay in fit spiritual condition, because when we're not, that's when we tap into these negative feelings and emotions, and particularly anger or rage, and do damage. So one of the things is to, when you do feel some anger, breathe into it. Just breathe into the anger and acknowledge where the anger's coming from. Acknowledge that maybe someone has hurt, you've allowed them to hurt your feelings, or maybe you've been left out of something, or you're just hurt. Acknowledge that. Or maybe you have fear of something. Maybe that's where the anger's coming. Maybe finances, or, I'm getting ready to go down to a little town east of me called Glen Rose, and I'm doing an OA retreat this weekend. And, I always plan for one, and, I invite God into it, and I do some planning. But then on about Wednesday, like today, I start getting into a little bit of fear. I think that's healthy fear about doing that workshop, because what I have found, if I don't have a little bit of healthy fear, I am tempted not to invite God into it. And I'll tell you, I can't do anything without His help. So healthy fear is good. But if you're angry, breathe into the anger. Really feel it to the very end of your body. Go all the way down deep into your stomach and breathe in the anger, and then blow out the fear and the pain that you're holding. Just exhale, and exhale very deeply. Just and make a noise with it. That's one thing about anger. But one thing you have to want to do is to be intentional. You might love being angry because it gives you lots of energy. And I have seen people that are not willing to give up their anger. And I wouldn't. It's like, if I gave it up, who would I be? And so it took me a while to be willing to even go through these steps, because I couldn't focus long enough. I couldn't stop the anger long enough. And you have to be intentional. You have to want to do this. You have to want to be a person that doesn't live out of anger and rage. You have to be intentional. So the next one is, I'm just saying, make a conscious choice. You can make a conscious choice. And what consciousness is to be more God conscious. If you can invite God into that anger, it's amazing, how He can show us. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to ever be angry. I always use this as an illustration about, we went down to Alexandria, Louisiana over Christmas and saw this play. No, it was over Easter. This play about Jesus's life. And it showed it, and they had a big stage and a huge life scale. You almost felt like you were in those days. And the man that they had playing Jesus, he looked like the conventional Jesus that we see, pictures of. And when he went in, they had this room fixed up, like people were in there gambling and drinking, and they called them the money changers back there. And they were doing that inside the temple. And it talks about Jesus went in there and he was angry and he turned those tables upside down. So that tells us that even Jesus Christ had anger. So we're in good company if we have anger. And then ask yourself, how much hurt are you willing to invest in being angry? How much hurt are you willing to keep being hurt in order to earn the right to be angry? Check this out with another person, particularly, of course it has to be a safe person, but a sponsor. Check it out. And, they're not going to take your feelings away, but, you need to look at how much time are you wasting on it, and, maybe set yourself a time limit. I'm going to be angry this long, Number 3, when you're really angry at someone, don't go to them right at first, talk to someone, get your emotions out of it, the blah, 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 and he did this and she said that, get that out. And then, if possible, go directly to the person. If you don't, it can turn into gossip. You can start telling other people or anybody that'll listen to you. And don't over-talk it. Just go to one safe person and get the feelings out. And then, if it's possible, meet with the person. Ask them if they'd be willing to meet with you, and pick a safe place, a quiet place to, sit and talk, where you won't embarrass them. They won't be embarrassed, you won't be embarrassed. But if it is, this problem that you have, if it's big enough to cause you rage, it's big enough to deal with it and work through with it. So select a safe place and where you choose to confront the person. And then be prepared. Be prepared to listen to them, because what they're going to do, they are going to defend what you are confronting them about. They're going to defend it. And, if you have used the confrontation tool that you learned here, if you were in treatment, and your family has been, educated on the confrontation tool, that's great. Most people you're dealing with won't know what you're talking about. So when you do confront someone, always be prepared. They're going to talk with you. And listen, and have a listening to them, because there's always two sides to every problem. There's always two sides. Have a listening. One of the things, there may be some information about the situation that you don't even know. And when you go, raging at a person about what they've done to you, blah, 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 without all the information, you're going to lose a friend forever. But if you can listen, have a listening to the other person, you might hear something that you didn't even know. Because a lot of things, what we don't know, we make up, and that's what we get angry about, the stuff that we make up. Okay, and so another thing, practice making direct contact. Eye contact. Look people in the eye. Don't look over them, under them, around them. Look them in the eye. Everyone is to do that. And see if you can catch their eye. And really look eyeball to eyeball with each other, if they will. And state how you feel using I statements. Do not use, what we say is, I allow myself to feel angry when, and then state why you're angry. What a lot of people want to do, and this is to avoid at all costs, is to say, you made me angry, or you make me angry. Don't do that. If you want to really cause some conflict, you put that out, because what it does, it threatens them, and they're going to put a wall up. And if you can set good boundaries, no one can make us angry. You choose, you can choose these feelings yourself. So avoid using that statement, you make me angry, or you made me angry. Because like I said, that puts them on the defensive, and then they're going to start dragging up everything that they've ever known about you. And that's another thing, is stay in the moment. Don't go back and dig up old stuff. Stay with that situation. And if you make that statement, you made me angry, it's going to put them on the defense, and they're going to tell you times that you've made them angry. Well, you remember. So only grown-ups can do this stuff. Kids can, but you can teach your children to do this. But, if you're like me and you dealt with things as an immature child in your adult life, we have to learn. If we wasn't taught how to deal with certain feelings like anger, we have to learn. And one of the things, a lot of people won't give themselves permission to be angry. And I think, and I've talked with people, clients, they have a fear of ever admitting that they're angry. If they ever tap into that, maybe we're encouraging them to do some anger work and they'll back off from it, because their fear is if they ever start expressing the anger, they won't stop. And they do. Once I've had very many, I've been doing this for years, and 35, and maybe 2 people have refused to do some form of anger work because the issues live in our very tissues. And when we can bring those feelings up and out the throat and get rid of those feelings and give yourself permission to scream, and if you don't have a group to do that in, get you a baseball bat and hit your bed with it and scream in your shower or whatever. Get those feelings out before you go talk to the other person, or they will bubble up. And validate your anger. It's okay to be angry. And it's okay to not let people abuse you or walk all over you. But a lot of times a relationship can be salvaged if you will deal with the anger head on, but do it in a healthy way. And in some of these ways that I have described. And, one of the most important things that I learned in Al-Anon, so it took a lot for me. And the lessons came in lots of directions. Yes, I was doing therapy work. Yes, I was learning how to do shame and anger release work with clients and myself. I was learning, I was writing, I was doing everything. But I'll tell you another thing that helped me as much, if not more than anything. And that is Al-Anon Family Group. And any of you, even those of you who are addicts, you're around addicts all the time. Go to Al-Anon. Al-Anon is different from AA. It's in what Al-Anon does, or what it teaches me, taught me, and it teaches any of us, is how to live with ourselves. When we can live with ourselves, we can better live with other people. When we start learning to love ourselves and to take care of ourselves, we hardly notice what other people are doing, because it's a full-time, I don't know about y'all, but I'm high maintenance, and I'm a full-time job for me and Misty both. Misty's here. I'm high maintenance to her. No, but when, it's all we can do to take care of ourselves. We don't need to get over there and get in other people's business. But one of the things, that's what Al-Anon teaches us, how to stay in our own hula hoop and how to love that person inside that boundary. One of the first things I learned, and that I started practicing little by slow, little bits of time, was learn to love the person, place, or thing that makes you angry. That came straight out of Al-Anon. Learn to love the person, place, or thing that makes you angry. Because if you can love a person, it's really hard to hate them. And if you don't hate a person, you can get angry at someone you love, but it's not the vicious type of anger. Love is the only emotion that can turn an enemy into a friend. To love the people that makes you angry. And that's a hard deal, but that's what I learned in Al-Anon. And I would gradually practice it. I'd practice it at home. I'd practice it in meetings. And I was very active in everything in my kids' school, PTA, this, that, homeroom, you know, and I always managed to either get my feelings hurt about something or get angry. I'd start with getting my feelings hurt, and then I'd get angry. And so I started having to pay attention and notice myself about the things that I let make me angry. And every time it would go back to that childhood of being neglected, abandoned, and abused. And so that is what was being, the pain was coming from. That's why those of us who come out of any form of dysfunction, I don't care what it is, needs to do that inner child work. It's imperative that we do that inner child work and grow the child up. And it's our place to learn to love that part of ourselves. And it's our place to protect that part of ourselves. So sometimes, it's okay to say something. It's okay to have your anger, but sometimes less is more. Watch your words. Words hurt. And so less is more. Sometimes the less said, the better. Because when you can always say something, but you can't take back the words once you've said them, once they're out your mouth. So, and you can resolve your anger without ever confronting the other person. I promise you. And if they're not safe people to go to, do not put yourself in that situation. Don't go to them. You can resolve the anger yourself, within you, with your sponsor, with safe people. And then if it's ever appropriate where you can go to that person, you do. But stay away from hurtful people. And what I mean by that is, and I love this illustration, steps 6 and 7 is where we start looking at our character defects. And one of my big character defects was rage and anger. And, in the Bible, Jesus talks about how we're going to have intolerable people to be around. We need to learn to have patience and tolerance. And I don't know, I'm talking a lot about Jesus this morning, and that's okay. But, Jesus had a lot of tolerance and a lot of patience with people. And he'd keep going to a person and try to talk with them. And if they kept putting him down, after a while, what he would do. And this is where, in our character defects, we have to really look at this. After a while, he would turn around, he would bless them, he would shake the sand off of his sandals, and he would walk away. And he would go try to help someone else. When you've got somebody that you're trying to change and they don't want to change, leave them alone. Maybe someone else is picked out to work with them. Who knows? So sometimes you can resolve your own anger without confronting the other person by asking yourself, really, how important is this? How important is this? 100 years from now, what difference is it going to make? How important that I really have to have my say about this. Check it out with someone else, and if it's that important, go talk to the person. But if it's not, you might want to leave that deal alone and ask yourself, when in doubt, don't. You can always go talk to them, but if you have a little doubt about, going and talking to somebody, wait a while until you get a real clarity if that's what you need to do. So when in doubt, don't. And then, like I said, with Al-Anon, what I learned is learn how to respond out of love instead of react out of anger. I was a reacting machine, and Al-Anon taught me to learn to respond out of anger. When someone is mean or hateful or not courteous, respond out of anger. I know Misty doesn't want me to say this, but I want to be Misty when I grow up. I'll watch her. Everywhere we go, she is so courteous, she is kind, she is loving. People are attracted to her. It's not, she's very attractive, but they're attracted to the God in her. And that's what we want. We want people to be attracted to the God in us, not us. And how they're attracted to that is by how we treat other people and how we treat each other. And sometimes, I'll be in a store, and if they're not waiting on me as quick as I think they will, I really don't say anything, but I might just, act a little hateful or something. And I'll look over there at Misty, and she'll give me a look about, okay, Minnie. But anyway, but I don't react today. I don't react out of anger, respond out of love. So, on the last thing, remember this. When you're angry, if it is hysterical, it's historical. Anytime you've got huge feelings about something, someone's done something to you, and you're over the top about it, you have gone all the way back to that core pain, into your history, and it's tapped into something unresolved that maybe you haven't worked on in your childhood, and you brought it up to that present day, and it's your history. And if you're hysterical about something, you can count on you have coupled the present with the past. And so that means, come to another 3-4 day intensive, talk to your sponsor, write about it, look and see where that anger is coming from, where that rage is coming from. Recovery, and when we do, we peel off layers, and some have been more damaged than others. And it takes a while. And don't just quit working if you think, well, I've done that. As long as there's pain, hurt, fear, anger, rage that's unresolved, keep working. Come here. And, we're putting down, by the way, on a calendar, I think I've put down in 23 two weekend dates. And it's for alumni only, people that have gone through any program, 4-day or inpatient. It's going to start on Friday afternoon and go till noon on Sunday. And it's about, there'll be no education because all of you are educated, you've been here. And it will be people that have something maybe that they haven't worked on in the past, or maybe something's come up in their life that they're having problems dealing with. It's reminding of their past. And so we're going to have a weekend, and I used to do these all the time. We used to call them breaking free from codependency. But it is about breaking free of anything that's hanging over from the past. So when the calendar gets out, I can't remember the date we put it on, but we're going to do that weekend. Kim and I will do that. I want to do that because... Do what? So anyway, it'll be on a weekend, and we'll put the date down, and it'll be for people, alumni, to come and do a piece of work like that we do here. All right, that's what I have. Tell me how y'all deal with anger. Do you have a problem with anger? Do you live with people that have a problem with anger? How do you deal with that? So who wants to speak first?